Welcome back to Current Affairs, our stories of love gone fatally wrong that are in the news right now. We are somehow halfway through 2023. For the next 2 weeks, we'll be doing a special half-year retrospective of the most interesting, surprising, shocking current affairs cases we've covered since the beginning of the year. Sadly, 2023 started off with a murderous bang.
Case 1, Ana and Brian Walshe. On New Year's Day, Boston mom and real estate executive Ana Walshe was supposed to catch a flight to D.C. When she never came, her company reported her missing. What started as a missing persons case and a manhunt around Ana's Cohasset home quickly turned into an assumed murder case. Ana's husband Brian was quickly arrested, first for misleading investigators for lying to them in initial interviews, and later for the killing of his wife.
In early searches, Brian's search history was extremely suspicious, including queries like how to dispose of a 115-pound woman's body. Investigators also found a bloody, damaged knife in the basement of the Walshes' residence and trash bags with torn-up clothing material, a hacksaw, blood, and a number of Ana's personal effects. Upon being arrested, more information about Brian started pouring out, including the fact that he had been previously involved in an art scam that led to his arrest and pleading guilty to wire fraud and other charges. He was also accused of destroying his father's will and unlawfully liquidating his estate.
In March, Brian pleaded not guilty to the charges of murdering his wife. However, the prosecution for the case has pointed to Brian's hiring of a private investigator to trail his wife under suspicion she was having an affair, along with $2.7 million in life insurance policies as evidence against him.
Case 2, Enoch 8. New Year's was also the backdrop for a brutal familicide in Enoch, Utah. To outsiders, Michael Haight seemed like a normal, loving father, but behind the scenes, his family was in chaos. 42-year-old Michael and his 40-year-old wife, Tasha, were in the midst of a painful divorce. His children and wife had gotten increasingly nervous to be around Michael. Early on the morning of January 4th, those fears would be validated in the worst possible way as Michael shot and killed his 5 children, his wife, and his mother-in-law before turning the gun on himself.
In the wake of the discovery, information was released showing that Michael had been investigated for abuse 2 years before the murders took place. In 2020, his eldest daughter, Macy, had shared with police the details of multiple assaults, including being choked by Michael. The then 14-year-old told people that he had first gotten violent in 2017 and that she was afraid he was going to kill her.
Recently, a Utah news outlet examined 72 minutes of video taken by Michael on his phone in the day leading up to the murder. It shows a strange combination of emotional abuse on his part, along with arguments with his wife about their divorce, as well as him promising to take the kids sledding.
Case 3, Abby Choi. Moving to a case that is a world away in every way is the murder of Hong Kong socialite Abby Choi. 28-year-old Abby Choi was part of Hong Kong's wealthy social scene and was also an international fashionista, having been featured in Elle, Vogue, and Harper's Bazaar. As recently as mid-February, she had been featured on the cover of L'Officiel Monaco, and yet, by the end of the month, she was splashed all over the news for a very different reason.
After Choi was reported missing, the Hong Kong police started investigating, ultimately leading them to a seaside apartment in Hong Kong's Lung Mai village, where they found a horrifying scene worthy of any Hollywood slasher flick. Electric saws, meat grinders, hammers, face shields, raincoats, and a dismembered body spread throughout pots, pans, and the refrigerator. In the subsequent weeks, more than a half-dozen people were arrested, including Abby's ex-husband, former brother-in-law, father-in-law, mother-in-law, and a number of smaller accomplices.
It appeared that the motive for killing had been around Abby wanting to sell a luxury apartment that her ex's family had been living in. She had purchased the unit under her father-in-law's name to avoid an excise tax. The suspect's killers now await trial, and the South China Morning Post is reporting that it could take her husband and children as much as 5 years to receive their $38 million inheritance.
Back in America, January saw another shocking incident in California. On January 2nd, rescuers were called to a sheer cliff near what's known as the Devil's Slide south of San Francisco. A Tesla had flown over the edge carrying a family of 4 and fallen hundreds of feet down. Despite all odds, every single person in the Tesla was alive. In fact, a 4-year-old and 7-year-old passenger had comparatively minor injuries.
Not so for the wife and mother in the front passenger seat, Neha Patel, who would spend more than a month in the hospital recovering. She told rescuers when they first arrived that her husband, Dharmesh, had intentionally driven them off the cliff, trying to kill them. That matched the reports of eyewitnesses who saw no brake lights and nearby camera footage that seemed to show the car accelerating before it went off the cliff.
Dharmesh subsequently pleaded not guilty, arguing that the family's Tesla had been experiencing tire issues that day. According to court documents, however, Neha confirmed what she had initially said, adding that her husband was depressed. Dharmesh has been held without bail since being released from the hospital. In mid-June, the Medical Board of California worked to bar the radiologist from practicing medicine while he faces charges. A hearing has been set for June, but was delayed while attorneys continue to review evidence in the case.
Case 5, Viktoria Nasyrova. This last case is the end of our first part of our mid-2023 retrospective, and it is the absolutely unbelievable story of Viktoria Nasyrova. Earlier this year, Viktoria was tried and convicted for the drugging and attempted murder of her friend Olga Zvek. Viktoria had given Olga cheesecake that left Olga feeling ill, throwing up, and eventually passing out in her room. The cheesecake, it turns out, was full of tranquilizer. The prosecution argued successfully that the motive for murder was that Viktoria was trying to steal Olga's identity. At the time of the incident, the two looked similar, and Viktoria allegedly wanted Olga's Ukrainian passport and new U.S. employment card.
All on its own, that would be a wild story, but the real motivation for Viktoria wanting a new identity made it even more shocking. It turns out that Viktoria was desperate not to be sent back to Russia because she had escaped from the law after being arrested for a murder there. She had apparently befriended an older woman who lived in her apartment building, slowly built trust, all the while stealing money and goods. Unluckily for Viktoria, that woman's daughter Nadia was keeping track of her mother from America and did not like her relationship with Viktoria one bit.
When Nadia's mother Alla, Viktoria's supposed friend, went missing, Nadia dropped everything to hop on a plane and return to Russia to try to find her mother. Nadia became convinced that Viktoria was behind her mother's disappearance, and she spent months hunting down leads until finally she caught a break. Nadia was able to turn up traffic cam footage from the day her mother went missing with Viktoria driving and her mother Alla in the front seat. Authorities would later realize that at the time the shots were taken, Alla was already dead.
Slippery as ever, however, Viktoria had begun an affair with one of the cops investigating her, who tipped her off when the damning evidence came to light. She was able to sneak out of Russia and eventually made her way to the United States, where she again blended in with the crowd. To get the full story of what happens next, check out the February 10th Doppelganger edition of Current Affairs. In short, it would take Nadia teaming up with a dogged private investigator to eventually find Viktoria and bring her to justice. Well, that wraps up part 1 of our 10 wildest current affairs cases of the first half of 2023. We'll be back next week for part 2. Until then, I'm Jessie Prey.
And I'm Andie Cassette, signing off for Love Murder Current Affairs.